To spread out power within the federal government, the framers of the Constitution created three branches: a legislative branch consisting of two houses of Congress, a Senate and a House of Representatives, an executive branch headed by the President, and a judicial branch including a Supreme Court.
The idea was that governments are responsible for doing three different things. You have to make some rules, you have to legislate, you have to have somebody who's going to enforce these rules, you have to have basically cops, and then you have to have somebody who's going to make decisions about individual cases regarding these rules. We call those powers the legislative power, the executive power, and the judicial power.
The Constitution gives Congress the power to levy and collect taxes, borrow money, regulate commerce, declare war, approve treaties and presidential appointments, and provide and maintain an army and navy. But in practice, Congress is our law-making body. There are two houses in Congress in which the states are represented in different ways and whose members serve for different terms. In the House of Representatives, each state is represented according to its population, with every representative serving for 2 years. Along with these, regardless of size, every state has 2 senators who serve 6-year terms.
In the Constitutional Convention, the question was raised why you would have these 2 houses of Congress. And one of the delegates noticed that the questioner had poured his coffee into his saucer and then poured it back into the cup, and asked why he did that. And he said, well, it was to cool it down. And he said, the same principle applies here. We have the sort of heat of everyday passions being reflected in what the House of Representatives is trying to do. And we take that idea and we send it to the Senate and let it cool down a little bit.
The Constitution also provided for an executive branch headed by a president. Under the Constitution, the president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces, appoints judges to the federal court bench and U.S. Supreme Court, nominates and appoints major executive officials, and may veto bills passed by Congress. The judicial branch includes the Supreme Court and all the federal district courts and circuit courts of appeal.
It was a popular idea at the time our Constitution was designed to try to separate those powers in the sense of making sure that different people had them, so that one person didn't have all 3 powers or 2 of the powers, because that would make them too powerful.
Power checks power. And so that means that no branch of our government can make a decision without the other branch having something to say about it.
You may have recalled from elections in the recent past, there was a lot of talk about gridlock in the national government, about the federal government not being able to get anything done because one party was squabbling with the other party and the president wouldn't let the Congress do what it wanted to do and the Congress wouldn't do what the president wanted to do. So they called that gridlock. What we need to understand is that this is built in. It's what's intended to happen.
The American Constitution has been called the most wonderful work ever struck off at a given time by the brain and purpose of man. But when it was initially presented to the individual states for approval, called ratification, it was often described as a bundle of compromises. The different way representation is allotted to states in the Senate and House is one example of a compromise that was reached.